Good.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We're very excited to be here. We're going to be doing a presentation talking about some of Michigan's spookiest ghost stories in different locations around our Mitten state. So, my name is Hillary,
And my name is Jessica.
and we are co-founders of Mystic Mitten Paranormal Group, which is a real-life ghost hunting group. We are called paranormal investigators, and what that means is that we go from different place to place, from businesses to homes to different places with interesting urban legends, and we look for ghosts and check out the ghost stories to see if there's any truth to them. So we've done about 30 plus investigations. We kind of lost track after 30. But it's been a little slow with the COVID things going on this year, but we've kept up and found some cool stories to share with you today. We're also founders of the Michigan Ghost Stories group on Facebook. You can follow us on social media as well too. So if you have any questions after the presentation, feel free to reach out to us.
The Michigan Ghost Stories group is a really awesome place too, where you're welcome to share your stories, ask for advice. There's a lot of people in that group now, so it's a really wonderful place to turn to if you just want to share your stories and have a welcoming area where your stories are accepted and you're not going to be judged.
So the first place we're going to talk about today is the Memphis Cemetery. And the Memphis Cemetery is located just about, I don't know, 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes outside of Richmond, Michigan, if you're familiar with it. And the Memphis Cemetery has a very interesting urban legend all about it, and that's of the Witch's Ball.
So the witch's ball is a sphere basically that kind of looks like a seeing eyeball, which is where it got its name from, which you can see it on the screen right now. Now the witch's ball has many different reports. One report is that the ball will shift time to time. Also, if you look into the ball and you gaze into it, you will see the lost souls wandering the cemetery who are buried there. Now the witch's ball is a really cool urban legend and obviously follow the rules and posted guidelines when visiting any cemeteries and graveyards. However, the witch's ball, we like to call it, is bunk. It's a very shiny and reflective surface. So it basically works as a mirror. So when you are looking into the ball or the sphere, you can see basically the whole cemetery reflected back into it. Now the ball is also made out of natural materials. I've visited it multiple times throughout my life as I have property nearby. And throughout my life, the ball has kind of shifted a little bit, but it's kind of natural for it to do so. So even though the witch's ball itself might not be haunted, that's not to say that the cemetery isn't.
So while we were doing an investigation at the Memphis Cemetery, we initially started and looked at the witch's ball and kind of came up with the idea that it was bunk. And we encountered a spirit named Brian. And now, just because, I don't know, a lot of people think that ghosts are only from the Victorian era or that all ghosts or spirits look like Halloween characters. And this spirit that we encountered was a regular old guy, and he was wearing a white baseball cap and a blue flannel shirt when I caught a little glimpse of him out of the corner of my eye. So after that happened at the cemetery, we brought some of our tools over to his grave site. And one of the tools that we use is called a spirit box. And what that is kind of like a radio that sweeps between the stations very quickly. So if you've ever heard a radio in between stations, it kind of makes a staticky noise. And so we have a device that does that intentionally. And what we believe is that sometimes spirits are able to manipulate that static and use it to say things to us. And usually when something like that happens, everyone in the group will hear the same thing and be like, oh, that was very strange. Where did that come from? So we had an experience with this spirit, Brian, when I was telling the group that we were with that I had seen somebody in a white baseball cap and a flannel shirt. And out of the spirit box came, it's Brian. And so to us, that confirmed that there was a spirit there. We also had a experience with what we call an EVP, or an electronic voice phenomenon. We captured what sounded like a little girl's voice saying, it's her.
Now, what was really cool about that experience is that Hillary in real time thought that somebody was calling her name or someone was trying to get her attention. And when we were reviewing the footage, just on our camera where we caught that, we picked up the EVP of the little girl saying it's her, speaking about Hillary in real time, which is really awesome. It's really neat when multiple things kind of align. That gives us more proof that that is something paranormal and not just a coincidence that that happened.
So if you're looking for a spooky place to visit, definitely check out the Memphis Cemetery.
And you can find videos about that too on our YouTube channel.
True, yes. We do have, there will be in the rest of this little presentation too, there'll be a little icon in the corner with a YouTube logo, and that just means that we have a video that you can watch if you want to check out our channel later. So another place that is very easy to visit if you're interested in finding spooky locations with ghost stories is the Detroit Institute of Arts, or the DIA. So we took a trip to the DIA and we spent some time talking to the different employees that we encountered, because we had heard that there were spirits and ghosts here. So several of the ghost stories from the DIA revolve around different objects that are on display. One of them being this painting that's in the background here on this slide, which is called the Court of Death painting. Several employees have over the years said that they have heard this painting fall, even though when they run into the room to see what happened, there's no painting on the ground. There's also a spirit that the employees refer to as the running man, who runs through the galleries. I had my own experience with the running man when we were viewing this painting, and it felt like I had bumped into something, or somebody bumped into me. And when I turned around, there was no one there. And so when we talked about it with an employee later, they said, "Oh, that's the running man." And he's been known to run up behind people or make footstep noises through the galleries and kind of creep the employees out. Another object at the DIA is this, it's called the nail figure on its descriptive plaque. And what this object is a spirit vessel from West Africa. And the idea is that like a shaman or a religious leader in the tribe would create this vessel, and then the different people in the tribe would come and it would essentially protect them, or in a way kind of grant their wishes when they stuck these sharp objects in their mouth to get spit on it and then stick it in the figure. And so several of the employees have claimed that they've seen this figure leave its glass container. They say that it comes to life and it does a kind of a tribal dance. Some other people have said that they've seen it running through the halls, but the general opinion of the employees is that there is something to this object, and they respect it tremendously, because apparently one person pulled a nail. I don't know if it was a patron.
I think it was an employee.
Okay, so it was an employee. Yeah. Pulled one of the nails out, and they were cursed with tremendously bad luck. I think they almost died or something like that. But so they attributed that to pulling one of the nails out of the sacred figure.
So at that time, they replaced the nail, and that is when the case was added around this figure. But if you do visit the DIA, if you find the right people, they love telling their stories about their haunted experiences that take place in the DIA. So as long as you just find the right people, they will be an absolute open book, and they can entertain you for hours and answer all of your questions.
There's also a few stories about the Dutch Gallery, which we weren't able to narrow it down to any like one spirit or character. But many of the employees say that lots of strange things go on in Dutch. So if you're at the DIA, definitely take a swing through the Dutch Gallery as well, and let us know if anything weird happens.
So up next, we're going to talk about the Szechuan Lighthouse, which is located in Upper Michigan. Now, this lighthouse is really awesome. It's one of many lighthouses here in Michigan. Now, when a lighthouse keeper lives there, that is their baby. That's their pride and joy. That is their whole everything, is making sure the bulb stays lit, taking care of it, maintaining the lighthouse for its sole purpose. Now, this lighthouse here, the stories are that one of the previous caretakers who passed away really liked smoking, and his wife didn't like him smoking inside. So now that he has passed, you can smell cigar and cigarette smoke inside the lighthouse. Another thing is, too, he was very specific and particular with how his kitchen table would be set up for his dining area. And they have many displays set up inside of this. It's basically like a house museum that you can go and pay and tour. And every time that they try to flip the fork over facing up, like most of us would set up our forks where the prongs are upwards, overnight it will rotate and flip over where the prongs are facing downwards, which was how he preferred to have his silverware in his place set, which is really interesting. Now, I was able to tour this location many years ago. This was when I was in my height of my photographer days, and I just love taking pictures. And here you can see on the screen two different images. The one on the left took place right before the one on the right. Now, if you follow the picture on the right, where the water horizon meets the rocks, you can kind of see a shadow figure taking place right in this general area of the screen. Now, what was interesting about this picture is I took multiple photos of the same thing, just slightly adjusting the exposure or where I was standing. And the picture right before and the picture right after did not have anything caught in it. However, on this image, it does look like somebody is sitting on the rocks looking out at the water, which is really fascinating.
So here's another view of it a little closer up, just so you can see. I think it kind of looks like a human shape,
Yeah.
for sure. So here's another interesting story, and this is a phenomenon that's been happening for over 100 years, and this is about the glowing graves of Evart, Michigan. Evart is a small town just west of Clare, Michigan, near Reed City. So it's a very small town, and the townspeople have been saying or seeing strange lights coming from the graveyard since the late 1800s. So definitely before any technology really existed to where somebody could be playing a prank or setting this up. That's not to say that these days people maybe don't stick some kind of LED light up to contribute to the folklore and the urban legend, but you never know. So this is similar to if you've ever heard of the Paulding lights. This is kind of another strange, potentially natural phenomenon. Some people have theorized that it could be some kind of bioluminescent moss that creates this glow, but no one really knows. But the story is that there was a railroad workers camp near the cemetery. And one of these, the men who worked in the camp one night was keeping a kerosene lamp lit. And unfortunately, the man and his son both drowned, and that there could have been a fire. And since then, people attribute these strange lights to the man and his son who passed away and their lantern light. However, several groups have gone out there to investigate, and no one's come up with any, concrete conclusions as to what it is, but this is definitely something interesting to check out. And if you ever find yourself out that way, you can definitely stop by to see if any of the graves are glowing.
Now, this one is one of my personal favorites because I am also a horror fanatic. One of my favorite trilogies of all time is Jeepers Creepers, which is really an interesting series of movies. Now, fun fact, this movie is actually based off of a story that took place here in Michigan, which is a little scary to think about. Now, back in the 1990s, there was Unsolved Mysteries show, not the Netflix series that's out now, but the original Unsolved Mysteries. And they did an episode based off of this story. Now, the story goes that a couple were driving down the street and they saw a person pulling out a body that was wrapped in a bloody sheet from back of their car behind this building that you see on the screen here. And that is the opening scene for this movie, is that a couple is driving down the street and they see a person dragging out a wrapped body out of their car and kind of just chucking it into the woods. So what actually happened, it was a domestic case where a husband and wife were fighting constantly, and the wife asked to file for divorce. The husband ended up killing his wife after tricking her to leave with him, saying that he needed to go to the hospital. He ended up killing her and ditching the body. And when he went to dispose of the body is when I believe it was actually a brother and sister drove past and saw him pulling the body out of his vehicle. Now, they never ended up catching the guy until this episode of Unsolved Mysteries aired. At this point, he realized that the jig was up and that he was caught. So he ended up choosing to take his own life. Now, the building where the body was found compared to where they saw the body being disposed of is actually slightly different. However, one of the buildings was on fire for a while, but it does still stand. A lot of the reports in this area is that you can hear screaming, you know, just feeling uncomfortable, cold spots, kind of like just your classic haunting. But what's really fascinating about this is that this actual case here started the spark for the Jeepers Creepers movie series.
So here is a story that is quite close to us. I think this is the closest story we have in this presentation as far as proximity to Roseville goes. And this story it's less of a ghost story and more about like what we would call a cryptid. So this is about the werewolf of Grosse Pointe. And here's the story. Approximately 200 years ago, a girl named Genevieve lived with her father in the area which would become Grosse Pointe. She was planning to become a nun in Three Rivers, Canada, but that notion did not sit well with her lover, Jacques, who resorted to drastic measures to keep her around. He sought out a witch, some say an old Native American sorceress, and made a pact to trade his soul to the devil in return for Genevieve's undying devotion. So what would make her stay? Jacques agreed to turn into a werewolf to give him the strength and guiltless mind to take her away and hold her against her will. During one particular full moon, Jacques indeed transformed into a werewolf and attacked Genevieve, who was at an altar in the woods. She attempted to run, but tripped, fell, and passed out at the feet of the Virgin Mary. Before the creature could attack, the statue turned into a werewolf, a stone, as a solution to protect Genevieve. From then on, Jacques would spend eternity as a motionless rock on the Lake St. Clair shoreline. Sometime later, a werewolf-type creature attacked and kidnapped a girl named Archange at her wedding ceremony. She was never again seen. Her husband-to-be, Pierre, was determined not to let the same fate happen to his sister, who was also preparing to marry. After setting out to search for the creature, he indeed found him and gave chase to Lake St. Clair later. Pierre returned home and told friends and family that the werewolf would no longer be a threat. So the werewolf rock that was on the Lake St. Clair, mysteriously disappeared and then reappeared at the corner of Chalfont and Kirby Roads, where everybody says it lies to this day. Now, the interesting detail about this rock, not only that it moved from the lakeshore further into the land, is that people say that the footprint of the werewolf is still on this rock. So the first pinpoint here in front of the lake here is where they say it was originally found. And then this right here is the intersection where it's apparently still to this day. Now, we have not had a chance to go hunting for this rock yet. So if anybody gets adventurous, you should go see if you can find it and see if there's any markings on it that look like a werewolf's paw, because we're going to go check it out and let us know if you see anything weird.
And one thing that's cool about this story too is, you know, every state kind of has their own cryptid, if you will. So just to kind of dive into cryptids a little bit more, so that's going to be like animals, so like Sasquatch, Bigfoot, the Yeti, the Loch Ness Monster, Mothman. You know, every state kind of has their own specific cryptid that's sort of assigned to their state. That might be based off of how many sightings they have, how many stories, the folklore. And for Michigan, the biggest cryptid that we have here is the Dogman, which is a similar character to the werewolf here in the story. So it's really awesome that there is one so close to home, that there's one of these stories floating around. Now, me personally, I've never experienced any sort of cryptid behavior. That's one thing that we probably won't ever go chasing out to find. We'll stick to the spirits of people rather than scary monsters in the woods. And it's just cool, though, to know that Michigan has its own specific cryptid that we're known for, which is the Michigan Dogman, and that one of these stories is so close to home.
Particularly in Grosse Pointe, too, people will say, and there are still kind of modern reports of this, or recent reports of this, too, is that there's like strange wolf howling near Lakeshore or off of Lakeshore. And so that they attribute to the werewolf of Grosse Pointe. But if you look at it as, you know, kind of in a bigger picture sense, some of the experiences people report in Grosse Pointe are pretty consistent with the experiences that people say they have with the Michigan Dogman. So it's a possibility. I don't know if it's one cryptid or several dogmen or how that works, but that could be kind of additional evidence of the Michigan Dogman, very close to home. So we have one more story here, and this is about the Crack the Whip statue in Sunset Hill Cemetery located in Flint. Now, this is a pretty famous statue in the paranormal circles in Michigan, and there's several reasons for that. So people have claimed that they've seen these statues of children come to life, that they've heard children laughing, playing, crying, and various other kind of spooky things, kind of all centering around these sets of statues here. Now, the Sunset Hill Cemetery has a variety of human statues throughout, and they're so realistic, in fact, that sometimes you can kind of mistake them for a person, an actual person. And the story with this statue goes that I guess the rumor is that the grandfather of a child who was killed donated this statue, or had this statue erected in honor of them, and to commemorate, unfortunately, the way that this potential child passed away. So according to the story, I don't know if any of you are familiar with the game Crack the Whip. Maybe we're more familiar with video games these days, but the game, I guess, is that you would run around in a circle and kind of whip the last person around and pull them off their feet, which you can kind of see being demonstrated in these figures here. And apparently there was a group of children playing sort of near the street, and whipped one of the children last in line into the street, and they were hit and killed by a car. So the story has kind of the urban legend has an extra bit to it. There is a shoe that's part of this statue that is kind of farther away from the rest of the statue. And the story goes that if you put your foot in it, that terrible things will happen to you and that you might die. So if you go to check this statue out, be careful. Maybe don't put your foot in there. We'll see what happens. But so this is definitely an interesting one to check out, particularly during the day. I don't know if we mentioned previously, usually when we talk about the different cemeteries in Michigan, we just like to remind people that it is unlawful to be in a cemetery at night without previous permission. We like to try and get permission now everywhere we go, particularly at night. So it's always best to, I don't know, ask for permission rather than forgiveness in the ghost hunting situations, for sure. But this is a very easy one to check out. So give it a look. Well, those are our stories. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We can open up a few minutes here to see if there's any questions. Otherwise, we can probably squeeze in another story here real quick without a slide. But if anybody wants to say anything, we'll wait a second and then we'll just tell another story. So here, one we didn't add to this presentation, and we'll leave out the adult themes in this story too, but another place that you can check out in Mount Clemens, there's a couple places you can check out in Mount Clemens. That's kind of, I guess, the other closest city that you could visit. There's an antique store called Alley Cat Juntiques, and it's off of, I can't remember, off of Main Street.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we like to do, particularly with our paranormal investigations, is investigate historic buildings. And a lot of times there's different businesses operating out of the historical buildings, and they'll come to us with different experiences or questions like, hey, we had this strange thing happen, or somebody saw something, or we captured this picture. Can you come check it out for us? And so we came to Alley Cat Juntiques after they had told us that there's this spirit that likes to play pranks, and that they had an experience where they thought somebody had walked into the shop, but there ended up being no one there. And then a while later, some customers were standing at the register, and the owner said he saw a man walk up behind a female guest and kind of swipe his hand on her shirt and move it, and that her shirt actually moved. And so that experience brought us there to investigate. And while we were there, we had the phone rang, and it shouldn't have been ringing. It was about 10 o'clock at night, and the phone just kept ringing and ringing and ringing in the business next door. And so we had some of the employees from the business next door investigating with us as well. And so after a while, they had Jessica answer the phone, and nobody was on the other line.
Yeah, and then eventually I ended up picking it up and just heard the dial tone, which was weird. Now, the cool thing about this building, after we were able to research it with thanks to our public libraries, we found out that this building was once used for Michigan Bell. So it would have been a place back in the day when there were operators for phones transferring the little plugs to connect you to the right line. This was one of those locations. So the fact that the phone was ringing when we were doing a paranormal investigation there is definitely something to mention, which was really cool. Now, another report is that one of their store cats will hang around time to time, and Hillary saw a cat in the basement, and she was able to describe the cat, and without knowing what that cat looked like, and the client confirmed that that is the cat that she saw.
Also, thanks to our, I think it was the Mount Clemens Public Library. Yeah, the Mount Clemens Public Library, we were able to do some pretty in-depth historical research, which is why we love our libraries so much. And we were able to find out that the original owner of the building and the man who constructed the building actually operated an ambulance service and potentially a funeral service out of that building as well. So I think it goes without saying that, you know, people would be suspicious knowing that information, that the building could have some ghosts in it. So we brought a device called an SLS camera, which if you've seen the Paranormal Activity movies, it's using an Xbox Connect sensor, and SLS standing for a structured light sensor. And what we tried to do was see if we could capture any stick figure anomalies, or see if anything that the Connect would register as people would pop up on the screen. And we were able to capture a strange little anomaly, a little stick figure person that seemed to kind of come out of thin air, stop, put its hand on its hip, and then lean with the other arm on a metal heater that was in the center of the room. And so you can check that out on our YouTube channel too if you're curious. We have videos of just about, I don't know, 30 or so, 20 or so, I don't know, investigations that you can check out. We've got several multi-part series. We've done investigations in Harrison Township that you can watch. The Alley Cat Juntiques, definitely, I think that's probably one of my favorite things that's ever happened, where we got that little stick figure guy. But I guess the most interesting part of that story too, again, in talking about the spirit boxes we'd used the spirit box device at the same time as the SLS camera device. And we captured, at the same time the figure appeared, the spirit box said, "It's me, Robert." So, and Robert was the name of the man, Robert Posner was the name of the man who built the Alley Cat Juntiques building. So that was very exciting. So there are lots of local ghosts, local haunts to check out. Just always be respectful, but there are plenty of places with lovely employees who are more than happy to share their ghost stories. That is how we have found a lot of these, and we highly encourage you to try it and check some things out yourselves.
And one thing going into it too is we've noticed that you catch more flies with honey. So if you go in and you're personable and you're fun and you're just having a good time, we end up having better results than if you go in and you start demanding responses. Sometimes you might need to get to that level, but usually you just go in and you have fun, and you're going to have fun with the spirits, and they'll have fun with you back.
A lot of times people too, I think they're intimidated by the idea of going out and trying to do an investigation on their own, or what we would refer to as ghost hunting. And that's because they think they don't have the right equipment. And when Jessica and I started, we just started with the cameras we had and our cell phones and a little recording device. And I think that at first too, we captured the Memphis Cemetery EVP with our cameras, and without using any of the fancy gadgets that we have now. So just because you don't have the equipment that you see on Ghost Adventures or Ghost Hunters or anything like that doesn't mean that you're not able to go out and have your own experiences and maybe collect something really cool. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions too is that something super exciting happens every time, or that you walk into a place that's haunted or allegedly haunted, and things will fly all over the place and someone will come out and scare you. Right. And that just isn't the case. It's a lot more tame. I think the things that happen are much more subtle, or you could miss them if you weren't paying attention. But other times Jessica has been poked and touched by several ghosts too. So every once in a while, something very dramatic will happen too. So you never know. But if you have any inkling in yourself or any desire to go try those things, don't let anybody stop you. Just take your cell phone, your camera, a friend. Always travel in groups, and try it during the day, because I guess the third misconception is that paranormal activity or, ghostly activity only happens at night, and that is not always the case.
No.
A lot of the places we've gone to have been during the day. So, yeah, so check it out. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much again. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. We have the Michigan Ghost Stories group, Instagram, Twitter. We also have a website. So we love talking about ghosts. So we are always available for questions. If you want to get our opinion about anything, or if you feel like you need your house investigated, we are here for that. So please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you, guys. Happy Halloween.
Thank you so much for the program.
Our pleasure.
Does anyone have any questions? Actually, I have a question if you don't mind.
Of course.
This is Tracy from the library for everyone listening. I'm just curious, how did you get interested in ghost hunting and the paranormal?
Oh, goodness.
Jessica, start.
Okay, so it's sort of a story. So I've always sort of been interested in this when I was a child. My grandma would always share her stories with me of when she had experiences of her own, or that she saw UFOs or anything like that. My grandma was really my hero. So anything that my grandmother said to me, it was true. So if she was a believer, I was a believer. So that is ultimately what sparked my interest in this, and then growing up watching the ghost shows. Now, what was funny is when I was a kid, this was like a secret. Like, I couldn't talk about this in school. I couldn't be open about it because I was afraid of being judged. And my main goal is to make the paranormal more normal. So now that I've kind of like pushed that wall down, and I'm like, I am a ghost hunter. I am a freak and a weirdo, and I love it, and it's amazing. And I want to talk about these things. It just makes me more happier inside. So I greatly enjoy it now that we're able to do this. And I was able to find Hillary in a very ironic turn of events. To make this happen is really making a dream come true.
So, and I had a variety of strange experiences that I didn't exactly understand. And I just kind of became obsessed with like figuring out like what was happening with that, or what happened to me, or does anyone else experience these things, or are other people having similar, experiences? And I started kind of studying and trying to understand my own experiences, and along the way connected up with Jessica, and she and I decided, because we had kind of common goals, where I was somebody who felt uncomfortable about sharing my experiences, out of fear that I would be judged too. And Jessica was kind of living her, like, this is what I like, and this is what I'm interested in, and I don't, I'm not afraid of that. And we bonded over that, and we decided we were going to found our own group. We started taking groups of female people out to do investigations together, because just as women, it felt like it was more difficult to find, safe groups or open groups where people could just learn and experience and have a good time while trying to, explore the paranormal too. And then that was how we founded Mystic Mitten. So, and it's kind of just been our little baby project since then, and we love it. We love nothing more than talking about ghosts.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, and thank you everyone for coming. We really appreciate it.
All right. Well, if no one has any questions, everyone have a great night.
Happy Halloween.
Thank you, guys.